I'm a caregiver first, I'm an engineer second, and I'm an overthinker. So some of this stuff has been on my mind for years and years, and some things are figured out as we went along. It's important to say that these are all anecdotes, right? This is things that I've learned from my experiences as a caregiver. I'm not your lawyer, I'm not your doctor, I'm not your engineer. So if weigh all that out with what works for you and your families. Email, Facebook, all the links are there. I post very publicly on my Facebook feed. I treat it like a blog, and lots of caregiving and lately food tips have been there. And I'm happy to talk and connect with anybody in the community watching Nora. Sorry. There's a couple of full-size photos in this deck, and they just set life timelines. So this was Nora and her dad at our wedding day in 2005, and it was a pretty day. At this point, her dad was positive, symptomatic, still walking, and he made it through the wedding day. Nora was not symptomatic and wasn't tested at this point. Nora's never been tested, so we don't know a CAG count. Her symptoms accelerated shortly thereafter, and we never got a test to get a number. A couple more things about us. We've been pretty well documented in the HD community. There's links to our 20 questions with London and Help for HD. There's links to our Let's Talk About HD interview that we did with Matt over at HDSA. We've been in it together since the beginning. We met in high school, so we've grown up together. We've grown up with the knowledge of HD from very early on. As she said, there was a conversation before we got married, what we were going to do, and this is what we did. I think the other key part to the story is how easygoing Nora has been with the whole journey. I don't know why. I don't know if it's luck, if it's the way we made our plans, but we didn't have a whole lot of fights throughout the transitions. We didn't fight about driving. We didn't fight about privacy. Things just worked out. I'd like to think it's because we had a plan and we started so young together that we grew up in the same plan and we were fully aligned, but I don't really know. Anyway, today I'm going to talk about 3 key areas, and I'm going to touch on these in each of the major stages of HD. I call them force multipliers, household tips, and kitchen tips, and we'll talk about them in the early stages, middle stages, and late stages. I gave a version of this talk in 2018 in LA, and I didn't have any idea about late stages because that, for me, started in 2020. And some ideas that I had didn't work at all. And also in 2018, when I talked about this topic before, it was pre-COVID, and things like Zoom, things like smartphones even, were not nearly as ubiquitous as they are today. I think in a lot of ways, the technology is catching up, and a lot of families now have the same tools in place for other reasons, and they're useful for caregiving. That's Nora and I in Alaska, 2008 or so. Not sure. Early on, we wanted to do a couple of things to help us improve Nora's quality of life. She stopped driving in 2010 and stopped working in 2011. For the next 3 to 4 years, though, she was pretty independent. She would walk miles in our town. She would go to the Y every day. She loved her yoga and Zumba classes. But I didn't know if she would get lost, if she would fall. I didn't know what was going on. So we worked together on figuring out ways that I could, frankly, track her without completely taking away privacy from her. We used an iPhone at the time, and the iPhone basically let you say, this family member can know where I am. Today it's called Find My, and that service lets you look at a map and see where the other device is. We didn't have any issue with Nora not bringing her phone or turning it off or anything like that, thankfully. That worked out really well. Today, there's also fall detection available in smartwatches. We didn't use these at the time. They didn't exist, but both Apple and Samsung watches have fall detection. And they will actually call 911 if somebody falls and doesn't push the button fast enough to turn it off. So another way that folks can get some peace of mind while they're still having some independence. By the way, all these underlines are links, and the deck will be shared out. I don't need to go into every link here today, but they're there. Driver tracking is another one that we didn't thankfully ever need. Nora stopped driving pretty quickly after 2 small fender benders within a few weeks. So she self-identified that driving wasn't really something she should be doing anymore. Driving tracking apps are available by the phone companies, by a lot of the major car manufacturers, specifically targeted at teenagers, something that can be modified for our family members as well. Early stage household tips. This is almost financial planning. So I'll be really brief here, and this is something that I can't say we planned. Looking back, it all made a lot of sense, but I think it's worth talking about for a couple who's planning what life with a potential diagnosis looks like. We knew that eventually Nora wasn't going to be working, and we knew that she wasn't going to be driving. But we ended up in a neighborhood that was very walkable, that had the aforementioned Y there. It had stores, it had a coffee shop, pizza, whatever. Even though Nora's keys were taken away, she was still very independent for, as I said, 3 to 4 years. I think this would have been a very different situation if we lived out in the suburbs where everything was 3-4 miles away. We didn't plan it this way, but it worked out really well. And I think it's probably something that's worth thinking about if you're looking down the horizon. I saw this line on the Help for HD website, don't wait, do it now. So I changed my slide a little bit to match that. Love it. Love that line. For us, it was travel. We went to lots of places, and I frankly foregoed retirement savings in my 30s to do that, and catching up now. But it was something that we really prioritized, and we traveled above our paychecks, but we enjoyed every minute of it. This is what mid-stage looked like for us quite a bit. A restaurant, big bib on, cup with a lid. Those cups are amazing. And this is how we spent the year and a half or so leading up to COVID. We traveled for my business quite a bit, and we went to 2 HDSA conventions like this in Boston and LA, made each of those part of a trip, and just really tried to keep ourselves moving. But mid-stage is where the technology really starts to kick in. Here, the force multipliers really started to become important for me. The first one is actually for me. Just wrote the word spoken word here. Podcasts, audiobooks, the radio in my headphones, which are pretty much never off my head. It's been my lifeline and my sanity, right? Because there's chores constantly in this house, whether it's feeding, whether it's bathing, whether it's caring for Nora in other ways. I'm always doing something, and I don't really get to sit down all that much. So putting my media from the screens into my ears have allowed me to still be entertained while doing everything else around me. The rest of these are to help Nora and what we did in our house. With mid-stage, we started to lose some of the privacy that we were protecting earlier on. We did allow cameras in our house. At this point, it was mainly in our public areas, and it was mainly used for me to know when Nora was moving around. So anybody in mid-stage knows falls are common. I don't know how many times we got elbows and knees stitched up and foreheads. We were doing it. What I did here was I used cameras that had motion detectors, and basically I would get a ping on my phone that she was getting up from the couch, and that was it. And she didn't even know I was doing it, but I would be able to walk over and pretty much say, hey, where are we going? And we were going to the bathroom, whatever, and I'd walk with her or whatever was needed. So that worked out really well. And it just gave me that extra set of eyes without having to be standing on top of her all day long while I'm in my office working. I also had a set of apps that I use when we're on the road. This one is particularly called Cloud Baby Monitor. And it's a set of apps that you run on a phone or an iPad. And basically one side is the baby monitor and one side is the parent monitor. This let me bring the same setup into hotels. And it let me go to a business meeting and still know that Nora's at home watching TV that afternoon, and I'd catch up on dinner. It let me push a button to talk to her without her having to answer a phone, which at this point she was struggling with. It let her call out to me, and I would hear a notification on my phone. So it worked out really well, and it was bi-directional, and it worked without being in my house with all the other house stuff around. As I mentioned, she wasn't able to really use a phone at this point, and I didn't want her to be yelling back and forth around the house, especially while I was on calls and things like that. So we use buttons to solve that problem. The buttons basically, when pushed, would send a notification to my phone via Amazon's, I'm not going to say it because my whole house will start making noise, but the Amazon tube, and that would let me know that she needed something. We had those buttons in the bathroom, in the bedroom, in the living room, and she could push it when she woke up in the afternoon or in the morning, and I would know that it was time to start her day. She would push it if she got stuck in the shower and needed help, whatever it was. It allowed her independence while still giving me the ability to come in. The third one there is to drop in. That feature, again, lets us have two-way communication without her having to touch anything. So I could drop in and say, hey, how are you? And she could reply. We could talk about it. This works when I'm out doing grocery shopping or whatever at the time. And she didn't need to interact with any computer equipment herself. It would just be in the house around her. Another force multiplier here, I added it this morning after hearing the earlier talk, was house cleaners. I wish the cleaners in New York were as inexpensive as Florida, but I started to look for ways that I had some time for myself. Here's an example of a couple of devices. I'm actually going to do a giveaway. We'll figure that out later. But these two devices here are push for alarm buttons that work without any other smart home equipment in your house. I wanted to buy them and test them out before I vouch for them. They both work fine. And in my 3-bedroom condo, they worked on from end to end without any issues. The one on the right is what we used. It's an Amazon button. They don't make them anymore, but they're still available on eBay and things like that. And it was for $10 a piece. It went into the rest of the ecosystem of their products, and it worked out really well. So in our house in the middle, I think the biggest takeaway from this slide is things change fast. We would have a problem. I would go about solutioning the problem, and then next week it was gone. We had this problem with sleep for sure. She went months of falling out of bed and not sleeping, and we went through medicine and this and that, and all of a sudden it just stopped. And she doesn't use any of these things anymore. There's no railings in our bedroom. There's no bumpers. We are tracking her sleep, but it's super consistent and hard to explain, but that's what it is. But in that interim, Every time we had a problem, I would think about how to solve it and not really just wanting to leave it alone. And that was really the kind of the takeaway that works in my head. If there's a problem, there's probably a solution, even if it's what we call a workaround, which is just something to get us to the next something. And railings and bumpers in the bed were big ones for the time that she was falling out of bed. Around this time, I moved out. I moved to the next bedroom next door, mainly because neither of us were sleeping cleanly. And if I couldn't sleep, I couldn't work. And if I couldn't work, I couldn't caregive. And just everything starts to spiral out of control when you don't sleep. I moved to the guest room, pretty much sleeping there on work nights and sleep in our bedroom on weekends. That works out for us, and it keeps us connected while also allowing us to get a good night's sleep. At this stage, we also started to plan accommodations. For us, it was moving. We moved out of that 2-family house. We moved to a condo with an elevator, and we moved here 6 months before she started using a wheelchair. And shortly thereafter, I pretty much gutted the master bathroom to tear out the doors and make it so it can be used with me helping her shower. I'll skip this except for the plug on the cups. Those are really important, but I want to get to the late stage, and I'm not sure how I'm doing on time because I don't know when I started. Stop me if you need to, yeah, ladies. That was us a couple weeks ago. Our wheelchair is getting bigger. We keep adding accessories to it. So we've added the head accessory there that helps her. And what's becoming ubiquitous squeeze bottles. This one has a beer in it, I think. This has been our solution to eating and drinking. And we tried thickened liquids for a little while this summer, but it didn't really work very well. And we tried these squeeze bottles when she stopped being able to use a straw, and it's been great. We'll get to it in a few minutes, but we moved to a blended diet, and these squeeze bottles are used every day for every meal.
Yeah, I can't.
Oh, Teresa, you came off mute. Late stage force multipliers. The first one is a professional one for me. It's be transparent. I had meetings with my teams. I had meetings with my customers. I had meetings with my bosses. Everybody knows I'm a caregiver. And the thing that I've asked them is, don't complain about me. Tell me first. If I'm sliding, I'm probably not going to know about it. I'm probably going to need you to tell me that first, right? Our goal is to caregive without other people in our house. That's what Nora wants, and that's what we've talked about over the years. That's what my whole professional life is built around that, being a remote employee and finding remote work and all that stuff over the years. But I know it's going to slide eventually, and that's having open conversations will hopefully let folks come to me first instead of going to HR or whatever. Hasn't been a problem. As I said, I'm still thriving at work, and we're coming out of COVID. Everybody's starting to travel again, so we'll see what happens, but so far so good. Active monitoring. I'm actually watching Nora while I talk. She's inside watching TV. At this point, there's not really any privacy, right? There's literally a camera in our bedroom focused on her pillow. There's a camera in the TV room where she sits. I'm pretty much watching her all the time, whether I'm there or not. That's just part of this, right? In order for me to be the caregiver, I need to be close to her. The Brota chair that we inherited from her dad is what she's sitting on now. I know she's not falling out of that chair. I don't think it's possible. And I know that chair is not going to collapse on her. And that gives me a lot of peace of mind. And that means I can focus on other things. Finally, delivery services. They're expensive, but they're cheaper than the per hour caregiver rate of somebody else coming in here so I can go grocery shopping. And takeout from every restaurant in the 3 cities around me means I don't feel like I'm locked in eating the same food at home every night and still getting to feel like I'm going out. This is just a slide of literally how I was making my slides this morning. One camera on Nora sleeping, always watching her, even though this was me sitting on the couch on my laptop, always there. Here's our Brota chair Memorial Day weekend. Our friends brought the barbecue to us because where they were having it wasn't wheelchair accessible, didn't have a bathroom that we could use. So everybody came to our house instead. And we don't have a yard, but that was a trade-off. A couple household tips for late stage: extra linens, less laundry. CVS sells bed pads for like 25 bucks a piece. Amazon sold 6 for 20 bucks. So now I have over a week's worth of bed pads and I don't need to do laundry every single day. This whole talk could be a talk about Amazon, but build your own supply chain. Depends, wipes, gloves, everything on subscription, and everything just comes on time, knock on wood, without me having to think about it. So again, I'm just trying to get things out of my plate, but still let them happen around me. Unconventional layouts. We actually got rid of our dining room, essentially, in our condo where Nora was sitting on that other picture. There used to be a chandelier there. We took it out, just put a placer up in the ceiling because we couldn't have a table there with the Brota chair. There wasn't enough room. Music. Everywhere in our house, there's speakers, and we found this playlist that brings Nora from here to here really quickly. And when she's having an emotional issue or whatever, we go to that and it helps immensely. I'm excited for the Help for HD cookbook. I'm going to give a plug. I haven't heard one today. I've submitted a recipe or two, and I think I'm not done yet. I'm not sure when the cutoff is, but I'll skip the left side. It's interesting, but the right side is just a couple of tips. And I'll share some pictures in a minute here. But track macros, right? I'm doing my own blended diet for her. I need to make sure she gets enough calories and they're the right calories. Show her the plate before blending it and tasting it after I blend it. When you blend it, it all looks the same. It's amazing how everything can turn orange. But these things have really helped, I think, her stay in tune with what she's eating and eat it and want to eat it. Squeeze bottles, we talked about that, and I'll share some more in a second. Pasta doesn't blend. Pasta turns into gum. I don't know why, but rice and cream of wheat work much better for us. Quinoa, calorie boosters. The rest of us don't get to eat like this, but she gets heavy cream and protein in her coffee every day, and I find 300-400 calories wherever I can. Just a couple photos to wrap up. This was my travel kitchen a couple weeks ago in New York City. So portable blender, funnel for the squeeze bottles, a dry bag in case I needed a sink or just to bring stuff home in. My popcorn popper has a kitchen sink. And then this was me turning famous Katz's Deli's matzo ball soup into soup for Nora at home. Here's another example of showing her the plate first. This is the cappuccino and a couple of cookies. Didn't need to do all this, but wanted to show her that's what her mom and I were having at the time. And then it went into a blender for her and she got a smoothie out of it. Same thing here. This is my French cheesecake. Cheesecake and heavy cream makes a heck of a shake. Here's an example of showing her the plate first, rice and some meat and some eggs, whatever. It doesn't look that great on the right, but on the left, it was appetizing. And she saw that before it went into the blender. That's all I got. Happy to talk more. As I said, I'm on Facebook very publicly. I'll definitely hop into the comments and make sure there's a link to the slide deck. And my link will be clickable there as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Joe, for coming on with us today. It means a lot.
Such great information. And there
Yes.
are comments on there of just how great your information is.